Joe Rogan just slammed the Trump administration's policy where they are disappearing people, immigrants who come to this country seeking asylum, who are not criminals, have done nothing wrong. The Trump administration has been rounding these folks up with no due process and deporting them to a prison camp in El Salvador where they're likely being tortured. And Joe Rogan, on his very influential podcast, denounced this. What he was denouncing was this gay makeup artist named Andre Hernandez, who is a gay makeup artist and came to America, Venezuela, legally seeking asylum. And before we get to Joe Rogan's statements, I just want to give you background about what is happening in this country and what we are doing to people who have done nothing wrong. So here's a little bit more background. He has no criminal record, yet Trump just arrested him for no reason and deported him to a notorious gulag-like prison in El Salvador, reserved for the most violent gang members. His big crime? Having a tattoo on his wrist of a crown with the word mom under it. This is true. This is the reason why they arrested him. They said that that was a sign he was a gang member. Trump and his goons idiotically claim it's proof that Andre is part of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Agua. So Trump literally disappeared an innocent man and threw him in a foreign gulag notorious for human rights abuses based on obvious lies with zero due process and in direct violation of a judge's orders. Trump should be impeached from this alone. And Tim Miller here said, "You are telling me this is Tren de Agua. He was so dangerous. We had to send to a foreign prison camp to be beaten with no due process." And he goes, "Do you have any soul left, Marco Rubio?" Yeah. This is who we locked up. This is who we locked up. Did nothing wrong. It's absolutely disturbing. This is the tattoo they said meant that he's a gang member because it says mom there with a crown. It's absurd. It's absurd. What I love, though, is that Joe Rogan is denouncing it. Joe Rogan is a very influential podcast. I'm sure you all know of him, but the reach he gets with a certain group of people is like no one else. He is kind of like the Midas touch of the right. Like, he is just a force. And for him to come out and say this is a very big deal. And we have to remember that the reason why we have due process is obviously so people have their day in court and they can defend themselves, but it's also because we want them to be able to defend themselves, because quite often the justice system doesn't always get it right. And it's important that people are able to defend themselves, even if they may have done it, because every now and then you do get people who did nothing wrong and they've been accused of something they didn't do. And Joe Rogan actually does a really better job explaining this than me. So let's just listen to him.
But that's also when mistakes get made.
Right.
And I think a human being being plucked out of nowhere and ending up in a country he's never been in a maximum security prison with gang members, seems like a bad thing to happen to me.
It's horrific. It's horrific.
I don't think that should be controversial.
No, that's not controversial at all. And this is the thing, measured twice, cut once.
Mm.
Yeah.
This is kind of crazy that could be possible. That's horrific, and that's bad for the cause. Like, the cause is, let's get the gang members out. Everybody agrees. But let's not innocent gay hairdressers get lumped up with the gangs, and then, like, how long before that guy can get out? Can we figure out how to get him out? Is there any plan in place to alert the authorities that they've made a horrible mistake and correct it?
Well, if you think about it from a government perspective, and this is where I think it gets quite sinister, is once you've done that, the incentive structure is never going to be to admit that and deal with it. The incentive structure is to say nothing, to cover it up, to pretend it didn't happen,
But
right?
that is horrible.
So someone ends up in a black hole.
Yeah, it's truly disturbing. And this is not the only instance of it. They also said they had a, quote, administrative error, sending a Maryland father to a Salvadorian prison. The Trump administration acknowledged in a court filing Monday that it had grabbed a Maryland father with protected legal status and mistakenly deported him to El Salvador. Protected legal status. But said the U.S. courts lacked jurisdiction to order his return from the mega prison where he's now locked up. As Joe Rogan said, or asked, like, is there a way to get them back? And as that other guy said, no, it kind of just becomes a black hole. Like, when they do this, it is very hard to undo it. His lawyer is asking the court to order the Trump administration to ask for Abrego Garcia's return and, if necessary, to withhold payment to the Salvadorian government, which says it charges the United States $6 million a year to jail U.S. deportees. $6 million a year. How is that for reducing waste? Quote, they claim that the court is powerless to order any relief, Sandoval told the reporter. If that's true, the immigration laws are meaningless, all of them, because the government can deport whoever they want, whenever they want, wherever they want, and no court can do anything about it once it's done. Yep. Abrego Garcia, and this is a little background on him, is married to a U.S. citizen and has a 5-year-old disabled child. He was also a U.S. citizen. He has no criminal record in the United States. And yet he got locked up to an El Salvadorian prison. And I don't know what's going on with Joe Rogan, but he also came out saying this.
I think healthcare 100% should be socially funded. I think that Medicare and Medicaid, having programs where people who are hurt can get an operation and it's not going to bankrupt them for the rest of their life, is another thing that I think society should be. It should be a part of our agreement to take care of each other as a community, that we chip in money for what people would think of as socialist positions.
Yeah. So I guess my takeaway from these things is, one, they're obviously horrific. This should not be happening. But sometimes you have to hit rock bottom in order to realize that you need to make a change. And my hope is that with the stupid tariffs that are literally ruining the economy. He had one of the best economies ever for a new administration. He ruined it in less than 3 months. And with all the chaos going on, that people who voted for Trump and those who are a little brainwashed by MAGA will realize that this is not the way to govern. This is not a way to live. This is not a way to be to keep a society. So I think, to me, Joe Rogan speaking out against this is a turning point in some ways, because it shows that, one, their propaganda machine doesn't work on everyone, and two, that when objectively horrible things happen, it has a way of opening people's eyes. So let's just stay on this. Let's see what happens. We have to get this guy home.